ready to start, okay? I just, only since it's the first year, just want to read you, started off as I usually do, with a little bit of I guess a joke or whatever it is, but something humorous. And then we'll get into the shir. So it seems that a Russian Jew was finally allowed to emigrate to Israel. At the Moscow airport, customs officer there found a Lenin statue in his baggage and asked the immigrant or person leaving Russia, quote, "What is this?" So the man replied, "What is this? This is the wrong question, comrade. You should have asked, who is he? This is Comrade Lenin. He laid the foundations of socialism and created the future and prosperity of the Russian people. I am taking you with me to Israel as a memory of our dear hero." The Russian customs officer let him go without any further inspection. At the Tel Aviv airport, the Israeli customs officer also asked our friend, "What is this?" He replied, "What is this? It's the wrong question, sir. You should have asked, who is this? This is Lenin, the SOB, who caused me, a Jew, to leave Russia. I take the statue with me so I can curse him every day." The Israeli customs officer said, quote, "I apologize, sir. You are cleared to go." Settling into his new house, he put the statue on a table. To celebrate his immigration, he invited his friends and relatives to dinner. One of his friends said to him, quote, "Who is this?" looking at the statue. He replied, quote, "My dear friend, who is this? It's a wrong question. You should have asked, what is this?" He said, "This is 10 kilograms of solid gold that I managed to bring with me without paying any customs, duty, and tax." So it's not, everything is not always what it appears to be. With that, I want to thank everybody and welcome to my, I guess, 15th or 16th year of giving these shiurim. I lost count already somewhere along the line. And, and for this year I've chosen a topic which hopefully will all be well. We'll be able to get through it. Should last about 25 or 26 weeks. And that's an in-depth study in the rise, decline, and fall of the Davidic dynasty. And I'm not going to start it from David HaMelech. Okay, I'm going to start it today, way back. Usually we do have Myra McComos, but for the many people, as well as Walter Winchell would say, the ships at sea who are getting this broadcast, they cannot see the Myra McComos. So I just want to indulge me for a couple of minutes. I just want to go through what the course outline is going to be so that you'll be able to know whether you want to come back or tell your friends to join us. So today I'm going to talk about the relationship between Leah, Rachel, and Yaakov, and the birth of Yehuda. It was my point to delivering this today will be that children's behavior when they grow up are always influenced by what they see in the house and how their parents treated each other. So to understand, to get into the mind of Yehuda, I think we need to know a little bit about the relationship between his mother, Yaakov, and his aunt. Okay, following that, I want to focus in on a few shiurim of Yehuda himself, the very, very prominent role he played in the sale of Yosef, his interaction with Tamar, try to understand that story, because that's really the origin of the Davidic dynasty. Ultimately, his emergence as the protector of Benjamin, his being able to stand up to Yosef, and the brachot that Yaakov gave him, which would foresee the future. Then I want to talk about all leaders have various positive character traits. All leaders have negative character traits. And I want to spend a shiur talking about the positive and negative traits of Shevet Yehuda as it goes through Tanakh, as it goes through generations. After that, I want to talk about, probably take about 3-4 weeks. I did this once before, about 5 years ago. I'm calling the chapter The Mother of Royalty. It'll be a complete examination of Sefer Megillat Rus. Okay? Ima Shel Malchut, Mother of Royalty. Then finally into David himself as a leader king, just touching on some of the highlights of his life. We'll talk about the chapter I called The Sword, the Slingshot. We all know what that's about. That's about his interaction with Goliath, David's capture of Yerushalayim, his transfer of the Oron to Yerushalayim, and ultimately the architect or the blueprints for the building of the Beis HaMikdash. From there, I want to go on to the beginning of David's decline, David HaMelech's decline. We'll do probably, unless you tell me not to do it, for the third or fourth time in the 15 years that I'm giving this shiur, we'll talk about the his relationship, the whole story of David and Bathsheba. Okay, and I'll leave that up to you, whether we do it again. Okay, and then ultimately the mysterious census that he took, which ultimately this chapter of I think it's in Shmuel Beis, which ultimately ruined his health. Then we'll talk a little bit about David's successes, some of the major kings, some of the good kings, some of the wicked kings, and what their legacy was to the Davidic dynasty. The decline and fall of the Davidic dynasty, we will talk about the rise of Assyria. We'll touch on King Chizkiyahu and King Menashe. And finally, last but not least, we'll talk about the tragic end of the Davidic dynasty as recorded in Tanakh, the rise of Babel, Nebuchadnezzar, the last kings, Yehoiakim and Yehoiachin, and finally the tragic last king of David's dynasty, Tzidkiyahu, and the tragic end he met, and the politics of what went on during his reign. We'll be talking Sefer Yirmiyahu, bringing him a lot of different sources. That's the outline for the course, okay? I hope if everything goes well, towards the end, we'll all be able to be back in shul. This Magefa of, what should we call it, COVID will be over with. Quite frankly, I'm not comfortable doing these shiurim by Zoom, but however you have to do what you have to do. Right? So let's get into it. Going back to the very beginning, okay? Back to the very beginning, I want to examine with you the relationship between Leah, Rachel, and Yaakov. Okay, it's worthwhile to discuss, to do this, because the background and an environment into which a leader is born ultimately becomes very, very important. Most of us, children are very, very resilient beings. Sometimes they don't say much, they don't express their opinions often, but they see a lot. As Yogi Berra once said, sometimes you can see a lot by observing. They observe a lot. And how the father treats the mother, and vice versa, many, many times, has a lot to do with how A, they are emotionally adjusted, B, how they deal with problems, and C, in the long time, how they see the world. Okay, so I want to try to give you, or get into a little bit of this background, okay, focusing pretty much on Leah, because Leah becomes the mother of Yehuda, and ultimately she becomes the mother of most of the Shvatim, 612 Shvatim. And not only that, it's Leah herself who, you think about David HaMelech, you think about the Kahuna, Kohanim, all of those come from Leah. Okay? So let's go, the sources I want to use are in Pasha Vayetze, right? For those of you that don't have the handouts, if you can get your Chumash, it's Pasha Vayetze. The first time Yaakov, we all know he sent to Padan Aram, to Lavan, to find himself a wife, because Rivka does not want him marrying anybody from Canaan. He has to get out of her house because Esav is threatened to kill him. Okay, so Oden Medaba, he comes across a well, another well story with sheep and etc. So Oden Medaba Imam, he's talking with the shepherds there, but Rachel boy. He spots Rachel for the first time. Rachel boy Matzona Shalaviha. She was sent out to be a shepherdess. Vayihi kasharoy Yaakov es Rachel bat Lavan achi imo. Yesobon leson Lavan achi imo. When he spots her, he sees her. Vayigash Yaakov approaches her. So he was able somehow to summon the strength to move the stone from the well. Then a very interesting sentence. Yishak Yaakov the Rachel. He had just met the woman, how long ago? 5 minutes before. Yishak Yaakov the Rachel. So what emotion here do we think Yaakov is showing by kissing Rachel? What relationship is this? Oh, by the way, you could please do not mute yourself, because I want to get some feedback. So if you're watching at home on Zoom, just jump in, and please, my shiurim are generally very interactive. I like to get feedback. Okay, so what emotion here is Yaakov showing that after meeting Rachel, 5 minutes later he's kissing her?
He's thankful. He's thankful that he found the person that he was supposed to find.
Huh?
It's not a romantic kiss. It's a thankfulness to God that he found, that he knew what he was looking for.
That's the right answer. It's not so much any kind of a love relationship here, because there really is at this point no relationship between them, but he's finally relieved somehow that this long voyage that he's taken, and Chazal tell us that Esav's grandson tried to kill him on the trip and all that, but he's finally seeing somebody that, he could bond with, or somebody that's paying some attention to him.
Aren't they kissing cousins?
Sorry?
Aren't they kissing cousins?
You could say they're kissing cousins, but what emotion does that mean that they're kissing cousins?
Hello.
Not only that, by Esau, it's called over Yev, Yaakov is also crying, which is another whole story. Vayaged Yaakov l'Rochel ki achi Aviyahu, v'chi ben Rivkahu, v'torotz v'tagei l'Aviyahu. He says there's a family connection. There's a family connection. Vayiki Shmuel Lavan and Shema Yaakov ben Achoso, and Lavan hears that Yaakov's name, Yovash l'Kvaso, v'chabek lo, v'yanashek lo, so, right? He's all excited himself, Laban. Sapel Laban is called Bormel. Yomalo Laban. So Laban says the famous story. He says to Yaakov, okay, Achi Achi Oto, you're blood brothers. Vajatani Chinam. You're not going to work for me forever, and I'm not going to put you up forever. Agidoli Mamas Krutecha. What do you want? What is the wages? Bob.
Marty, why is Yaakov
Somebody on the show.
your father's brother? What does he say he said or not? He's not his father's brother.
He's not his father. Okay, that's a good question. I don't know.
Signing.
What do you think the answer might be? I think he's trying to somehow develop some sort of familiar relationship. Why exactly he uses those terms, I don't know.
His mother's brother.
Yeah. Okay. So then it tells us Laban has shtei banot, Shem Agdola Layov, Shem Aktana Rachel. Okay, it's got Leah the oldest, Rachel the youngest. The Eni Leah Rakos. Rachel's eyes were somewhat, I want to say, let's call it damaged. Okay. Rachel Hoisoya Fas Torah Bifas Mareh. Okay. So the Torah is one of the few times that the Torah goes out on the limb and describes somebody as a Yefas Torah or Yefas Mareh. So, okay. Obviously, Chazal, we all know, say that Leah was crying because the words were out that somehow, Yitzchak had two children, Yaakov and Esau. She would marry Esau, and okay, so she was crying. Now, Vayahav Yaakov es Rachel. First time the Torah really uses the word as that there is some sort of a love relationship. Torah doesn't throw around words haphazardly. Okay, Vayahav Yaakov es Rachel. Yaakov loves Rachel. So he says, Vayomer, and he says, I'm willing to bind myself to you, to work for you for 7 years, okay, in order that I get Rachel as a wife. Vayomer Lavan, so Lavan says, Tov, it's fine with me, Titio so, Loch Titio so Yeshacher, I may as well give it to you, you're just as good as anybody else, okay. Shpoy midi, stay with me, okay? Vayabo Yaakov Rachel Sheva Shonim. He worked 7 years, spent 7 years. The days went by very, very quickly because, quote unquote, this was a love relationship. So days went by very quickly. So we all know the famous story. Give me my wife, I fulfilled my end of the bargain, yes, of Laban is it's good with Laban, okay? So he makes, I guess, a prenuptial party, whatever they want to call it. But he substitutes Leah for Rachel, which I don't really want to get into. There's tremendous amount of chazal about what really happened between the two of them, whether Leah was involved and the extent that Rachel was involved, but this is not where I'm going to with this story. So he gets another wife, a future wife with this. Now it's the morning, and all of a sudden, Yaakov is aware, or becomes aware of the fact that he thought he married Rachel, but no, he's got Leah. And he says to Laban, Mazoso Sisoli. what did you, Levine, do to me? I worked with you I worked for you for 7 years to get Rachel. Okay? Why'd you fool me? So by Levine, the famous answer, we don't do things that way here. We don't give away the younger one before the older one. Malchut Zos worked for me another 7 years. Then you can have Rachel. Vayas Yaakov came by Malchut Zos. And with that comes Bilhah. Interesting pasuk. How would one interpret this sentence? Vayahav gam es Rachel milayo. He loved Rachel more than Leah. Okay, we'll talk a minute about what kind of level you think is involved here. Okay, let's talk here about. Well, I just want to go a little bit more. Vayar Hashem kisenu Leah. Hashem sees that Leah is, according to the Torah, how would you translate the word snua?
Hated.
Hated, loved less. What would you say? Snua, right? I mean, the Torah uses the word snua. So Vayiftach is more. Therefore, he allows her to become pregnant very, very quickly. Rachel Akara. Now, what did Rachel do? Any kind of punishment? It seems Akara could be a biological situation, because we all know that Sarah was Akara. Okay? But read in this kind of text, it seems almost like Rachel was being punished either because of what she did with the wedding night with the Simonim, or why else, whatever. Okay, so you have to put that in our mind, right? But our layer, huh?
But the Simani was to help there, so she did something good, not bad.
Okay, well, but she.
Was she punished?
Okay, so why was who, Rachel, punished?
Because it's just by the way it says, because God said.
How do you think? Let's look at it this way. All right, here's one of the things I wanted to talk about 2-3 minutes down the road. We'll talk about it now, being that Ada opened it up. How do you think Yaakov felt the morning after the wedding when he woke up and it was Leah instead of Rachel? What do you think Yaakov's feelings to Rachel were? That's all you would say? He was disappointed with Rachel? But how did he feel towards Rachel?
Perhaps furious.
Huh? Okay, we don't know. The Torah doesn't tell us. Apparently, he only takes his anger out on Levine because he yells at Levine, Levine. He could have said the same thing to Rachel, correct?
Did he know that she had participated in this
He
deception?
had to have.
Well, again, he has to know because, Chazal tell us there were certain simonim and words that, Levine was known to be a trickster. Okay, and there were certain simonim, I don't think they went into some sort of candlelit bedchamber for the wedding night. So apparently, Chazal say that there were certain key words that Rachel and Yaakov had to do them, and that Rachel shared these words with Leah to make it easier to fulfill this well, I don't want to call it a fraud, but whatever went on. All right. So anyhow, okay. So, all right. So we're Rachel Akora. Let's leave it at that. Vatar Leah Vatel Levine. Let's go through the emotions now that are expressed by Leah. She has a son. Okay. But Tikva Shemo Reuven. She calls him Reuven. Yamra. Hiroa Hashem Ba'anyi. What does that mean? God saw that what?
My troubles.
Troubled something, right? Something was not right in her relationship. So as far as Leah is concerned, the birth of this child hopefully will allow Yaakov to love her, right? Right? But Taharot, she has a second child. But Levine, okay, but Tomer, Kishama Hashem ki senua anochi. Okay? Leah is saying very, very clearly that what? She's hated, okay? So in order to make my life a little bit better, okay, Hashem was good enough to give me a second child. But Tikva Shemo Shemo. But Taharot Batelet Bain, she gets pregnant the third time, but Tomer, Ator Hapam Yilobeg Sheilai, Yoladati Lo Shlosha Bonim. Now perhaps my husband Yilobeh will pay maybe more attention to me, to cling to me, to pay me a little bit more respect. So I can't rush Mo Levi. But Taharot, fourth child, but Tailed Bain Batomer Hapam Odees Hashem. This time I'm going finally, after it gets to the fourth child, she finally turns around and she says, thank you, God. Akein Korosh Mo Yehudah, Vatamo Biledus. After 4 children, the birth process is interrupted, right? A couple of comments on this, okay? Number one, up until this time in the Torah, who is responsible for naming children?
God.
Father.
God? All right, so take a look. Some of the names I pulled up out prior to this, all right? All the way back to Adam, all right? Adam Shloshim Vayoled B'Msoket Salmo Vayikra Et Shemo Sheis. Okay? Who named Sheis? Adam, the man. Okay? Next. Vayikra Et Shemo Noach Lemor. Lemach names his son Noach, who named the child the male. Okay? Vayikra Avram Shem B'Noach Sheyod Lo Hagar Yishmael. Okay? Who named Yishmael? The male, the father. Okay? Yachrei Chen Yotzo Achiv Yado Chezes Ba'akev Esav Vayikra Eshemo Yaakov. Who named Yaakov? His father. Okay? Vayikra Yosef Shema B'chol Menashe. Yosef names Menashe. The Shema Sheni Korah Ephraim. Okay? So there is a history over and over again that it seems to be somehow the father's prerogative to name the children. When it comes to Yaakov, okay, every single one of the children, except for way at the end, Binyamin, because the mother dies in childbirth, every single child is named by the woman, by the mother. Why do you think that is? Does this tell us anything? Can we draw any conclusions from this?
It seems, I don't know how to say this delicately.
Say it any way you want.
It
You're with
seems
friends.
that Yaakov doesn't have anything to do with these births or the children. He's just sleeping with her. And I
Right, he
wonder
seems to
why
be at the risk of turning everybody off, like a baby machine, right? That's what he's there for. He has the children. Okay, know how he's able to impregnate all his wives, ultimately. But from then he walks away. You would think that Yaakov, Avram named Yitzchak named Yaakov. You would think Yaakov would want to name certainly the Shvatim. Okay, so that's something to think about in terms of what was Yaakov's relationship with his wives, but more importantly, what was his relationship with Leah that he didn't even feel was important to name any of the children.
May I ask a question?
Huh? The Mepharshim may say things, but I didn't go to the Mepharshim to look it up, so I know, I just thrown out the question, I can give you the answer.
May I ask a question?
Yeah,
As to your point that in the prior generations, it was always the father that was naming the children. Didn't Chava name Cain and Hevel?
yes, she did, but when she named, there was a problem with her naming, Konisi Ish Es Elokim. She made herself a partner with God, okay? So, yes, Chava did name Cain and Hevel. Okay?
Okay,
So the
thank
point
you.
being,
No, just that, you had said that it was always the fathers that named, but, this was a
all right, so
situation
instead
in
of
which
calling
the mother,
most of the time,
the first mother had named her children. And then there was this change where it was the fathers that took that role.
all right. But certainly Yaakov had a long history of the fathers naming children.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Who is the question from?
So my name is Robin Einbinder.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Oh, I see your picture up. Hi. Welcome to the community. Thank you. Okay, good. All right. So let's look at something here. How would one document or talk about the continuing, evolving relationship between Leah and Yaakov with the birth of each of these children? Is something different in her relationship with Yaakov as each child is born? Okay. All right. So let's look here, Bob.
How come she decides the fact that only after the
Fourth child. Okay, so I want to talk about that now. Good question. I'm going there right now. Let's go back all the way to Reuven. Reuven is a contraction of the word Reuven. Take a look. I got a child. By this child, what does she think? She's declaring to Yaakov, we've had a child together. Perhaps now our relationship will improve. She's optimistic. She realizes she's the second wife, but by maybe having the first child, things will get better between the two of them, okay? Hashem saw that there was problems, I was having problems, whatever it might be, okay? And now we have a child. The child would bring us closer together. By the time child number 2 comes around, and he says, a great plan of maybe this child, Reuven, bringing them closer together doesn't seem to be working. Why? Because now she's moved into more despondency. She says, Ki Shema Hashem Ki Snua Anochi. Shimon, like Shimon, he sees that Yaakov is, quote unquote, hates him. Okay? Child number 3 now might be at best as a baby with 3 children, and Chazal say that they saw through HaKodesh that there was going to be 12 shvatim, 4 wives. So with child number 3, maybe Leah gets a little bit more optimistic. Okay? Possibly now there's a feeling of hope. Yator, my Yilove, Ishi Elai, somewhat better than being, but not exactly an expression of quote. Now, all of a sudden, after 3 children, I want to say she realizes where this is going. It does not seem from the text that her relationship with Yaakov has improved at all. So she's not going to talk about her relationship to Yaakov. She's not going to talk about her relationship to her marriage. She's finally decides, Hapa'am Oda Es Hashem. Okay? 3 children, no thank you to God, But Leah is extolled in the Torah by Chazal over and over again that she is the first person, at least in the Torah mentions, that said, thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. It all comes allegedly from Leah. And perhaps this is the reason why ultimately Yehuda is singled out for leadership. Okay? Not Shimon, not Reuven, not Levi. Hapam Odash Hashem. Perhaps this is a precursor for what Yehuda is going to be. Okay? All right. Okay. So, the naming of Yehuda, in effect, marks him, I want to say, for future leadership. Okay? The name conjures up a different status from all the others. One, like I said, she's grateful. She first wants to say thank you. Two, she realizes that she doesn't see any influence. Go ahead, sure. Yeah. Did Leah have children? No. It's a very good question. I don't know. I should know the answer, but I don't. Anybody out there know the answer? Did Leah have any children before Yaakov married Rachel? I got a couple of no's and I got a couple of yeses. No, he worked 7 years. He worked 7 years, but he was already married to the two of them. He didn't have to wait 7 years to marry. Okay.
Right. I think that he married Rachel.
Anybody? Wait. Anybody?
I think he married Rachel right after the wedding.
Yeah, I think you're right. He married Rachel right after Leah, but he agreed to work 7 years. Okay. So from that, let's deduce that he in fact did have the children. All right? All right. I think also it looks like there's, at this point, after the 4 children, Leah now seems somehow content now with her lot in life. Okay? Apam Oda as Hashem. She realizes now that she has 4 children. Now 4 times 4 wives would be 16. And again, Ruach HaKodesh, she saw that there would only be 12. So she figured she's got 14. She's up in the game. All right. All right. Now, I want to look at one thing. How would one describe, at this point, how would you describe Yaakov's feelings towards Leah from the point of the wedding night to the birth of Yehuda, 4 children? How would you describe Yaakov's relationship with Leah? Because Chazal have at least 3 different opinions about what was going on between the 3 of them, I guess, or the 2 of them in this case. Okay. Number 1, would anybody listening or here in the audience, hundreds of people here in the audience, would anybody want to say that there was absolute hatred between Yaakov and Leah on Yaakov's part? Okay, all right.
What does he mean when he says Shama Hashem Kisnu'ani?
So that becomes the question. What then did she mean if there was no hatred? Okay. So there are some Chazal, hard to say, believe, because we're talking about the Avot and the Imahot, and what I'm talking about could almost be, quote unquote, sacrilegious, that the Yaakov hated Leah. Okay. However, If you go look in the Hirsch Chumash, if you read the Chizkuni, okay, that there was hate, that Yaakov harbored hate towards. Okay? What did she do? According to Chazal, she constantly reminded him that you, Yaakov, got whatever your hair because of your trickery with Esau. So I, Leah, did the same thing back to you. You're not clean in all of this, okay? You didn't treat your brother Esau at the time honorably, and okay? So, again, so according to Chazal, she reminded him constantly of this. She reminded him constantly of this, all right? Next, would you say that he really did love her, but the type of love that he expressed for her was somehow, for want of a better word, an inferior type of love? Right? I'm not talking about today, but can a man love, if we were allowed to, can a man love his two wives equally? Never having experienced that, I don't know the answer. But certainly, if in fact Yaakov did in fact love her, in Leah's eyes, it was an inferior kind of love. And she expressed it all the way through the birth of 4 children, right? The third possibility is that Yaakov's confused. He loves them both equally, but he's confused. So I'll read you a Ramban. One of the heavy hitters, all right? Ramban. Yaakov feels both emotions, he writes to Leah, both love, hate, and indifference, actually 3 emotions, okay? Simply because he's confused about how he feels. In many respects, Yaakov sees in Leah many of the things that went wrong in his life. Okay? Disguising himself with a sibling, Esau, Yaakov, he put on the clothes, remember? Okay? Yaakov gets the birthright for a bowl of soup. Leah gets pregnant. We'll soon see for a bunch of flowers. We didn't do that story with the Dudayim. Okay, we'll go into that very shortly. Right? So he's confused. He's all over the place with his emotions. Okay? All right. So ultimately, let's do the Dudayim story very, very quickly. You all know the story about the Dudayim. You have your Chumash. It's there. It says, That's later, okay? But that's later. That's when already Reuven is already grown. Because the point I'm moving to is, how do the kids perceive all of this relationship between Yaakov and Leah? How do they perceive it? They could see that something was wrong in this relationship. Because the first times next week that we're really introduced to the Shvatim and introduced to Yehuda at length, they are negative stories. They couldn't get along with Yosef, right? Yehuda will discuss exactly what his role in Mechiras Yosef was, but whichever way will come out, he certainly didn't come out at the moral high end of this, right? It's Yehuda we're talking about, and kidnapping or selling a brother, okay? And certainly at the beginning, most of the story, his relationship with Tamar, his leaving the family and marrying a Canaanite woman, having a relationship with somebody on the road who he thinks is a Zonah, originally, by Achshavel is Zonah, certainly is not indicative of what Yehuda ultimately will become. It's a tremendous, tremendous moral failing. And my thesis is that there was something wrong in the family upbringing that turned Yehuda originally into what Yehuda became. And possibly, and argumentatively, yes, that maybe this was the relationship that he saw in the house between his father and mother. And in today's popular culture, pop psychology, perhaps this turned him originally into doing things that he should not have done, right? Certainly, the rivalry and the relationship between the Bnei Rachel and the Bnei Leah are going to continue for thousands of years in Jewish history. And Chazal traced this all back to the relationship that Yaakov had in the house with his two wives and what the children perceived. And that's a very, very important inyan in understanding Jewish history, understanding the Davidic dynasty. Okay, you're going to have your show from Binyamin, Bnei Leah, Bnei Rachel against David HaMelech. You're going to have this constantly throughout Jewish history. Okay, ultimately, just to end this on a positive note, history is very, very funny. History is funny. How did all of this work out? If Rachel was the favorite wife, okay, how come she's not buried next to Yaakov? Who ultimately gets buried next to Yaakov? Leah, right? And what was the source of Leah that she, but not Rachel, got buried next to Yaakov? So Chazal want to say it was this tremendous Agnes Nefesh that she had for years and years and years, okay, with the kids, with growing up with Yaakov in a house where, if not despised, which is a very difficult word, she certainly was the less favored of the two. Certainly was the less favored of the two. When we're first introduced to Rachel and to Leah, who was the one that was crying? Who was the one that was crying? Leah was the one that was crying, right? And Rachel was the Yafas Toar, the Yafas Mareh. In Jewish history now, thousands of years later, who was the one that was crying? Rachel Mevakeret Al Boneva. Okay, good. Rachel is the one that's described as now crying. Okay? Rachel is the one that's now crying. And Leah is the one that's laying in the kever for all time next to Yaakov. And Chazal want to trace this to the story of the Dudoyim. Why was Rachel not buried next to her husband? Because she was willing to trade a night with Yaakov. She was willing to trade a night with Yaakov for something as silly as Dudoyim, flowers, okay? And Chazal, for this she got such a punishment, because I guess when you're at the level of Rachel and Leah, when you mess up, the consequences are more than if Marty Levine messes up. However, maybe Chazal itself didn't understand why things turned out the way they did, so they grabbed a hold of this Dudoyim story to say, you know why? Because she gave away a night with Yaakov for flowers. She did what? Okay, all right, I'll say that's a valid point.
She did,
Okay,
she did save her life, save her honor, save.
for those that, Carla has made a very great observation. And she said that, in reality, Rachel had no choice. She had to go along with what her father wanted, because what would have been the consequences to her? Okay, so it's a good point. All right, I can't argue against you. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
But she wanted her sister to not be humiliated.
okay.
On the same hand.
Ultimately, there was some difficulty between the two of them. Okay. I've been told I have to finish at 5 to 11, so the next class will come in. I hope this is just, you don't judge my shiurim by what we said today. Just a very, very brief introduction of where I want to go for the rest of the year. The conflict between the Benos Rachel, Benos Leah, and the origins of Yehuda, his birth. And everybody have a good week. And hopefully this week everybody will stay safe. And everybody, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Marty.
Marty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank
Oh,
you.
that Cheryl just popped up. Hiya, Cheryl.